Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. This is Frank Agan. I'm your host, founder, and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today is another guest day, as our subscribers know, as those people who listen often know. Much of the time, it's me sharing ideas, insights, and best practices for professional relationships and business networking. Actually, I should say this. Much of the time, I'm doing interviews. I started out with the intent of just me talking. But I've stumbled onto great people to talk to, and one great person has led to another, So from time to time, it's me talking about networking, but other times I talk to people about relationships. And all relationships are kind of related. There's no such thing as a professional relationships. They're just relationships. So I bring on authors, speakers, thought leaders, social scientists, people who can kind of share insights with respect to relationships. On with me today is Elizabeth Fournier. Did I do okay with that?
You did fantastic.
Okay, great. The stress is over for me. It's always the names. At any rate, she has dedicated her life to helping individuals, families, and the world access sustainable, meaningful, and affordable burials and funeral. She was called to this work when she was 13 years old after the death of her mother and her grandparents. And she now runs a one-woman funeral service out of a repurposed goat barn in Boring, Oregon. I say repurposed because I want to put emphasis on that. It's not a goat barn. She doesn't have goats running around. Where she uses traditional burial practices that are kinder to humans and the earth. In addition to her work as a funeral director, Elizabeth wrote a book called The Green Burial Workbook, or Guidebook, the Green Burial Guidebook. She gave a TEDx talk called Going Green, the Last Act of Environmental Volunteerism, and is the voice of the autopsy exhibit in the forensic wing at the United States Museum of Medicine. She worked with the Herland Forest in Washington State, I assume, to steward the first natural organic reduction from human composting. She's affectionately known as the Green Reaper. Elizabeth, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And we were talking before we hit record. You were referred to me by Tanya Scotisi, who is also a funeral. Well, she is a professor of funeral director services now, and
really a phenomenal networker, as you know. She's really fantastic at connecting humans. She knows about human relationships.
Oh, she does. I was on the phone earlier today with a woman in Israel that she's connected me to, trying to work with help this woman. Well, the woman's got daughters who are American citizens, but they're 8 and 3, so she's not an American citizen. She's trying to get to this country with her daughters because all the fighting going on in Israel. So Tanya just knows where to reach out to people, and she's connected us. And I guess to jump into this, when I talk about relationships, people think of networking. They think of business networking. They think of being at events and passing out cards and pressing the flesh and all that stuff. And I think all that's fine from a business perspective, but my 2 cents on it is, and I kind of indicated in the lead up to this, there really are just relationships. I mean, God gave us one brain. There's not a special compartment for commerce and another compartment for our personal lives. It's kind of one brain, and we view relationships as all the same. And when Tanya reached out to me and suggested you as a guest, at first I was like, okay, how does this work? How does this relate? And then you just have to kind of reflect on times being at people's final services, if you will, to realize that, there are relationships there. I guess, go ahead.
Everything is a one-on-one relationship. Being an author, I've been told you can have a book signing or a book reading, just all you need is a book and a pen, right? One person to listen to you, one person who wants you to write your name in the book. Even when it comes down to having an interview, you're talking to one person. And they always say, oh, well, don't get nervous about whatever you're doing. Just pretend like you're just having a conversation with one person. Don't think about the 500 pairs of eyes looking at you. It's just, again, one person you're talking to. Same thing with death and dying. When somebody is actively dying, you're having that one-on-one connection with a human being. When people come in and talk about their loved one grieving, you are actively listening. You know what actively listening is? It's opening your ears, it's closing your mouth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's that. No words, no commentary, letting them talk. That's a one-on-one, really important human relationship and business connection.
No, I totally agree. I think when it comes to death and dying, they struggle with that. They struggle with going to the services. I don't know what to say. What should I do? And I think those things kind of carry over into even in business. Where, everybody loves a situation where it's fun and everything's positive, but it's not always fun and positive. And we kind of need to put our big boy and big girl pants on and just get out there and do things. Before we hit record, we were talking about relationships. And I just made the comment that it seems that when people pass away, a lot of their sins tend to go away. For some, all of them go away. We see that with presidents. Remains to be seen what happened with Donald Trump. But Ronald Reagan was a great example. Ronald Reagan was somebody who was he was different than Trump, but he was very polarizing. But when he passed, there was even amongst his critics were like, you know what, he'll be missed, kind of a thing. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, why that is.
Well, I think it's totally true. There was an era there for 1 year in my life where I had 77 blind dates just in the 12 months there, and I actually wrote a book about it called All Men Are Cremated Equal, My 77 Blind Dates. And during that time, my godmother, who was in her 90s, bless her precious soul, said to me, honey, try not to date a man who has a wife who's passed away. Divorced, fine, but passed away, don't, because you'll never compare to her. And I had her go a little bit deeper, because when you have someone in your life who has massive wisdom from years on the planet, by all means, ask more questions. And she said, no matter if she wasn't a very good wife or a very good mother or a very good cook or what have you, he's not going to remember that. He's going to remember whatever is good, and that will be romanticized greatly. And I think we do that with breakups and relationships. How many people have yearned for somebody in their life who you knew it wasn't a good fit, but they missed that person because you think about the good things. Well, when somebody dies, same thing. And it doesn't really matter if somebody died a death where they just weren't a good person, they made a bad choice. It is our human function to really value love. That's really what it comes down to with everything. It's love, and that love comes through.
And that's interesting because I read an article in Psychology Today talking about when people break up, divorces, whatever, breakups with significant relationships, they tend to get angrier in time. It's almost like while the person's still alive, it's just they're just get angrier and angrier. They conflate the bad times. And again, it just seems to go away. And why can't we make this reconciliation now with people?
Yeah, the anger is external. That's really an external mechanism. But if you really peel all that away and get to the root and get to the heart, we loved that person at one time, either as a sibling, as a lover, as a neighbor. We loved them for some specific reason and we're drawn to them for some specific reason. And that's what we remember in the end. Just like the aging process, somebody starts off and they need help with their socks and their shoes and to eat. They go through their life and do all the things they want. But guess what? At the end, they sort of need help with their socks and their shoes and to eat. So it's a real full circle of life with everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. as you work with your clients, I guess they have lots of people who are grieving coming in and not really knowing what to say. That's what I hear. I don't want to go because I don't know what to say. Well, you think you don't want to go. The people who are there don't want to be there either, right? I mean, they just lost a loved one and they're going to be having to, I guess, how do you coach those people to have those conversations?
So one thing I do is I call everybody who comes in my families. I don't call them clients or I don't call them cases. They're all families. And so when they come in, I have a real nice country style feel here. We all sit around a table. I let them know that I have a whole bereavement library. It's a lending library and it's all facets of books, from everything from what is hospice to I just lost someone to suicide to stillborn to all types of anger, whatever your grief factor is. Hopefully one of those books can speak to you. So I encourage people, grab a book, because if you take it home, there might be at least even just one line in there that you can hold on to that can tether you through is really important. Other people will reach out to me and they'll just call and say, hey, I'm going to a funeral and I don't know what to say or I don't know what to do. And what I tell people is do something. Words are fine, but actions really speak louder. So rather than say, I'm sorry for your loss, which doesn't always ring true for people. When my father passed away and I heard, I'm sorry for your loss, I almost wanted to say, why? This man lived a glorious life. He is doing fantastic things. He's with my mom. He is on his cruise ship in the sky. Right? And so that was my mindset, but not everybody feels that way. But if people would say, oh, well, let me know if I can do anything, or, okay, well, I'm here. That's so hollow and that's so empty. Offer something. Do something that people wouldn't want to do, such as, how about say, I'm going to come over tomorrow and I'm going to clean all the toilets in your house, because they're probably receiving guests, or maybe they're just sleeping weird hours. Or again, that's why people do meal trains and food trains and bring things by. Sending texts every once in a while, thinking of you, sending you love. Also, one really important thing, say the person's name of the person who passed away. Say, I thought about Fred yesterday and this is what I thought. Or, so what would you think Fred would want to be doing today? It's all, that person still is so larger than life in that person's heart and in their mind. You can actually say their name, you can ask about them, and you don't have to worry, oh gosh, I'm going to remind him that his son has died. No, he's never going to forget. He's thinking about it all the time.
Right.
He's thankful you give a darn and you've stopped your happy, joyous, pain-free life to see about him and his son.
Well, that's really good advice. That's really good advice. I'm going to get off of the I'm sorry for your loss and come up with something a little different. I did read an article, not an art, was in a book. Sheryl Sandberg's book. I don't know if you read it, Option B. She talks about the death of her husband in there. And what she coaches people on is, don't offer. If you need anything, just reach out, because that puts the burden on them to come up with something, and they don't know, well, when you say that, do you really mean it? Or, you're not
going to ask somebody to come clean your toilets.
Right. Yeah. Or come mow the grass, or in the Midwest, come shovel the snow, hey, listen, don't worry.
Whatever.
Yeah, don't worry about shoveling the snow. I got it. I got it. January's mine. February, we're probably out of this mess, but I think that's
don't
really
make them schedule it for you. Just show up and do it. Just say, I'm going to come every Sunday and this is what I'm going to do for you. And you don't have to be home. You don't have to give me anything. I'm just doing it. And that's so loving and so helpful, and takes the burden off them of remembering to be available for you or having to call you to ask you to come on a certain day. Yes. Help the person who's grieving. Help them. Be sorry for their loss. Help them.
And I think that translates over into the non-grieving world too. So often people say, well, I'd love to help you. Let me know what I need to do. And I'm always like, And what I've tried to do now is just figure out what people need help and just act.
Or how about this one, Frank? Okay, let's do lunch sometime. I mean, again, so vape it. Don't say it if you don't mean it. Just like after a date, yeah, I'll give you a call, or we should do this again. Again, we just say these niceties for the heck of it. I don't know why, because the other person has an expectation you're building up. So it's pretty silly. So it's just a matter of I love how you say that. What can I do for you? How can we get your message out? What can we do? That's fantastic. Let's just be human. We're two people
Yeah.
talking. How can we better each other's life? How can I make your life easier rather than harder?
Well, what I tend to do is look, and I ask myself, what is it I would want in this situation? And then act on that. For example, it's nice when I post up podcast interviews or whatever, having people like, comment, and share. Well, when I see somebody's doing something, I'm not waiting for them to ask. I'm just going to do it because I know that's probably what they need. It may not be the most important thing they need, but it's something they need. And I think we can kind of do that in the grieving setting as well, where, okay, what would these people want? What would really help them? And I think there are the little things. I don't know about going in somebody's house and cleaning their toilets.
Closer friend, definitely. Closer friend or family. Yes.
But I could see showing up with a mower or showing up with a snow shovel or just whatever, a rake, and just taking care of the leaves or whatever it might be. And
I
just
remember
saying,
a great story that I read in Reader's Digest. I thought this was so fantastic. There was a woman who had found out that her father passed away, and it was in a different town, and I think it was Cincinnati, and she's going to have to get on a plane and go. So these people from the church just showed up in vans, and they just took over and said, "We're here to love you. You just pack, you just shower, and we're going to do everything else." Somebody fully cleaned the kitchen. Somebody took all the shoes from the family and took them out in the garage. They brought their own newspaper, their own cleaning kit, and they cleaned the shoes, just assuming they probably have to pack their shoes. And they tried to grab all the black sort of funerary shoes. I mean, something like that, polishing someone's shoes. I mean, how Christ-like. That is just so lovely. So again, stocking a refrigerator full of food, maybe not something to get on a plane, but you know what I mean. Just try to get the airport rides together, do all those things that somebody would need.
watch the dog. That's, again, I'm thinking I have a dog. I guess if you have a cat, you think, and cats are different than dogs for the most part. You can leave a cat for a couple of days. You can't leave a dog for a couple of days.
But I like what you're saying. You're saying, now think about your life. If you had to do this all of a sudden, what would be helpful? Oh, I've got that plant. Oh my gosh, that plant that's probably going to die. And oh yeah, I've got a date book full of dentist appointments I have to cancel. Just whatever it is. And just something matter more than standing around with your hands in the pocket, just saying, okay, let me know what I can do. Then it's someone feels like, well, then I have to give you a project. I can't give you a project. I got to get out the door.
Right.
Mow the lawn. Good one. Mow the lawn.
Yeah, there you go. Mow the lawn. Let's talk about meaningful rituals and gatherings that we can do to honor our loved ones.
That is such a wide swath. That's wonderful. I have so many people who come in and say, my mom wanted nothing. She said she's going to kill me. She wants nothing. She wants to be cremated. She wants nothing, and that's it. And we're not going to do anything because mom wants nothing. And I can sense sometimes there's that hanging in the air, but I kind of want to do something, but mom said not to do anything. So what I say to them is I said, okay, that's fine. So maybe don't have a visitation with mom. Maybe don't bring mom into a church or something, but what would help you? Do you want to have a lunch gathering where you all get together and have a toast and maybe share a funny story about mom? Would it be helpful if you had some of your best girlfriends and you planted flowers in your garden one day? You might need the closure. You're the one who's left behind. You're the one who has to figure out the new normal. It's okay to celebrate, and you can celebrate anyway, from let's go eat food to let's all bring a book of poetry and read it in the woods to, let's have prayer, let's have whatever it is. And when people come in too and say the same thing and they want to make their arrangements, I always try to encourage them and say, well, maybe for your children or your spouse or whomever, leave the door open. And you can say, you don't have to spend money. I'm okay if you don't do anything. You really don't have to. But if you need something, and give them that okay, because people need the okay. And then on the flip side, something very important too, it's good to be specific about your wishes. But again, these are all true stories. I had a daughter come into me about 3 months ago, and she got her mom's ashes, and she said, my mom was really clear that she'd never been to Italy, and she wants her ashes spread, not just in Italy, but she wants me to hike as close as I can to Mount Etna. and scatter these ashes. And the girl said, well, I'm not really a hiker. And you know what? I don't even have a passport, and I can't even afford going to Italy. So I'm just going to have my mom's ashes, and I have no idea what to do. And so we talked about it, and I helped her kind of, conciliate that and make some peace with it. But I thought that's a really good thing for me to pass on to people. Be specific in what you want. However, that really put quite a burden on that daughter, and the guilt that the daughter has to carry around because she's not going to be able to honor her mother. That's a real burden.
Well, when my mother passed, she made it clear, and it was rather sudden, but she talked about it leading up to it. She wanted to be cremated. She donated her body to science, and so we got the cremated remains. For those listening out there, that didn't cost us anything. That was kind of a gift back from the university she donated her remains to, and they said, "Here, thank you. Here's the cremated remains." But she wanted us to spread her ashes on Lake Superior because that's where we grew up, and she loved Lake Superior. Well, that's against the law. You're not supposed to be doing that. So it did kind of create a little bit of a burden. We chartered a fishing boat, and wink, wink, charter captain, can you go below deck for about 10 minutes? And he was on board with what we were trying to do. And we're probably not the only ones. But I don't think my mom ever really realized that, you're really not supposed to be doing that. But interesting. I once knew somebody who was in one of my groups, AmSpirit Business Connections. I remember coming into the chapter. It was a Tuesday morning because the group met on Tuesdays, and somebody said, "Hey, did you hear about Ed?" No, it was kind of like he won an award or won the lottery or whatever. No, what's up with Ed? Well, he died, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Yeah, and everybody in the group had that same reaction, because the only person in the chapter who knew was the attorney, because he was the attorney and had explicit instructions, nothing in the paper, no announcements, don't tell anybody. I just want to, no viewings, no nothing. And it was really kind of an odd moment. Like, are we being pranked here? Because it just seems so weird. But and that's his choice. But it just seemed, I felt bad for his family. I felt bad for his family because it's like now you're saddling them with, "Hey, how's your dad?" Well, he passed away 3 years ago. Whereas an announcement in the paper, something on Facebook would have certainly helped alert people to this potentially uncomfortable situation. I don't know. You got to kind of,
Girl is for the living.
yeah.
That's why people put stuff on Facebook. I'm sad to announce my grandfather's passed, because they need you to invisibly hold their hand. They need you to say, "Oh my gosh, oh, I know how much he loved you." They need your affirmation and your love. Being left behind sucks, right?
Yeah,
There's no easy, even if someone's going to pass away, when it happens, it's shocking. Because
it
even though
is.
mom had Alzheimer's for 4 years, when mom isn't here anymore, oh, now I'm an adult orphan. Now I don't have a mom. Oh my gosh, wow. And you do need love and support, and we need humans. Why do we connect? We're humans. Again, all boils down to love. So that's another great thing that you brought up. Maybe do allow your peoples to, yeah, if you don't want to formally plan something, but do allow them to reach out, because they have their own issues that they need, and they need
Yeah.
handhold.
No, I mean, that's a good point. I remember, I got a call late at night that my mom had a massive heart attack and was in a coma. And I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and she was in Duluth, Minnesota when this happened. Got on a flight 6 o'clock the next morning. Was up in Duluth, Minnesota. It was January in Duluth, by 10 a.m. and was with my mom. She never really regained consciousness, and I came to grips with the fact that she was gone pretty much by the time I got there and talked to the doctor, and talked to her partner, and knew where this was headed. And so I just knew it was not a question of, she wasn't coming out of there. I knew it. I wasn't going to tell my siblings, what was in my heart, but I was just kind of reading the body language of people, and they knew, the medical staff knew it as well. But humans are not dogs. We don't put them down. We just let them go gracefully, and they did. But the moment she ultimately passed, it was like something hit me. I mean, physically hit me. because I was pretty stoic up until then. I mean, not caring, but it's like, okay, I've already come to grips with she's leaving. She's gone. My mom's gone, but I just remember breaking down, and I was just floored by that, because where did this come from? Because it was, I've been here all week, and I don't know, but it was almost chemical. It's almost like we feel that elation of love. It was just kind of the opposite of that, where it was just I can't describe it. And it's obviously not something that you can recreate in humans. We shouldn't be recreating in humans. But it just came out of nowhere, so I don't know. So.
And no one can say, oh, yeah, I know exactly how you feel, because we don't. Yeah, someone
Yeah.
else could have lost their mom, and someone else could have got on a plane. Somebody else could have sat there and been there. But no, you had a different experience than anybody else. You had a different relationship. We have to remember that too. We all grieve and mourn differently. I have a brother 1 year apart. We were both there for the end of life for my dad, and then when he died, and then going through the process of it. And we both did it 100% differently. Nobody was right. Nobody was wrong. I was the one who was more I don't know, jubilant about it in a sense, where I put this wonderful obituary
Right.
on Facebook with all the fan tags. I wanted to celebrate him. And
Yeah.
my brother was really quiet about it. So again, that's fine. But again, different people have different needs and are different people. And that's something with grieving that's so very important. And if you know the person well enough, just like you know what to get them for their birthdays, and maybe what favorite foods they have, again, treat them like they're still a human. Treat them like they're still doing this. Just like when somebody announces they have cancer, all of a sudden they become a cancer victim, not just Fred. So
Yeah.
I think people sometimes don't announce it. But again, that relationship, people themselves don't want the relationship to change. I don't want to be considered differently now that the sister died. I don't want to be considered differently now that I have a tumor. However, I do need a little bit more support and a little bit love that's really genuine in there. So again, treat the person like they were prior to the big announcement of the life-altering change. Just love them more.
Okay. Let's shift gears here a little bit. I want to talk about sustainable funerals and burials. So you kind of, in your bio, and that's why you're here. I mean, you're, well, not why you're here. We've covered why we're here, but I think there's something different about what you offer. Certainly people can get your book, and it's certainly something to consider. I don't know what you think about this. I want to be cremated because I don't want to be a burden on the world for the rest of eternity. I don't want my kids or my wife to feel like they've got to stay in this town because I was buried here. I don't, and maybe they won't. Maybe they're up and gone. I don't. Go ahead, please.
Did you know in Ohio there is a aqua cremation, a green cremation, water-based? You were the very first state to implement this and have this as a legal form of disposition. So there's a flame cremation, then there's the eco-friendly, earth thankful aqua green. So check it out. That is something you could possibly do. So what is in my wheelhouse is I happen to be in the state of Oregon, and I happen to be in a rural county, which allows people to be buried in their own yards. I bury a lot of people in their yards. So you can say I'm not a traditional funeral home, although I take care of people who want cremation. I take care of people who want an embalming and a metal casket and all of that. But my passion, my love, my baby, all of that is that idea of natural burial, which is having a body which doesn't have chemicals or anything put into it. It's going to be put into some sort of a container, which is alternative, which is a natural wood, or maybe it's going to be a shroud. And then it's placed into a cemetery or a private yard space, which doesn't have a concrete liner around it. There are cemeteries in every single state that allow natural burial or green burial. It's nothing very sassy and crazy. It's what we did 150 years ago before the whole funeral and cemetery industry started with all their goods and services they can offer. It's just the basics. So if people say, give me the pine box and I just want a simple burial, ding, 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 that's green burial.
Right. Okay. This is all very interesting. I think we always think in terms of modern times, like this is the way it always was, and it wasn't always that way. There's an old cemetery near our house, and I'll walk through there and look at the tombstones, 1837, and a little something about the person. And but you tend to forget that that's a small minority of the people who were around then that got buried in this particular place. I guess the question I have, what happens, is there a registry for them where people are buried?
Well, it's going to be listed on a permit that's held in the county, held in a state. So
Okay.
it's not a matter of anybody can be anywhere. There's 40 states that are really pretty open to the idea of burial on private property. I would say 45, but those other 5 have some caveats there. But if somebody is interested in private land burial, then you just call your local zoning and planning and see if they say, yes, there's nothing on the books. We're not looking at city limits. We're not looking at dense populations. We're looking at something more rural. The actual landowners having at least 1 acre, giving permission, all of that. But when people say, oh, we've got this family property, or we have this farm, or, we've lived in this out in the woods or the country for a while, that's probably a perfect candidate. People bury their horses and their dogs and their cats in their yard all the time. It's pretty much the same thing. And it's done respectfully, it's done ethically, and things are charted and planned and all that. But most people don't go that route just because what happens if I move? What happens if I sell the land? You still can sell it with somebody there. You just don't have the right to go visit, grandmama in the backyard on Easter if that's someone else's property. So there's many, many cemeteries. So I just behoove people who have any interest, go to the Green Burial Council website, or go to my website, cornerstonefuneral.com. And there's a list of all the cemeteries that allow this, and you'll be amazed. And there's many faiths, Jewish faith, Muslim faith, Catholic faith, big fans of natural burial.
Interesting. When somebody goes to sell the property, is that something that's disclosed to the?
Yes, human
Okay.
remains are there. So when somebody's going to do this, again, it's all about the humans that are here. And when
Right.
I talk to them, I say, you need to have the relationship with the rest of the family to sit and discuss this. And then we also need to be smart about it. So you need to draw a little map of the yard or the property and put a little indication, a little heart or something where somebody is, and maybe put that with the title, or put that with the title company, something, because all of a sudden, if the homeowner passes away suddenly, someone might think, well, I know there was some bushes out there, and I think it's somewhere in the lilacs, but the lilacs now have grown to be huge. We need to know where somebody is. For the most part, the next owner is probably going to say, oh, okay, because when you're in the country, you probably have your cow and you probably have your sheep. And where I live, we have a rescue farm. So all of our goats and sheep, there's a doe. I mean, everybody's there. So it's a matter of, is someone really going to move all of that? No, they just go back into the earth. You'd never know. And
Right.
it's beautiful. And I'd open up the window and throw food out to them and sing them songs daily. But nonetheless, yeah, someone can just buy the property. Life goes on.
Well, I really appreciate your time today. This is, when you get these referrals, sometimes it's like, okay. I mean, I trust Tanya, I do, but still it's like, okay, you see something I don't. And I'm too bashful. I'm too ignorant to know and too bashful to ask.
Yeah, death is a weird topic for most people, and I understand that. I think especially it's awkward. So it's delicate. People need to be reverent, and this is going to happen to all of us. But again, it doesn't need to be so in your face. We can talk about the fact it really bases down to love and relationships.
And one more time, your website is?
Yeah, so cornerstonefuneral.com. And then I also have a personal website called thegreenreaper.org. And that was a name people gave to me locally in the community because they knew me as that girl at that funeral home who buries people in their yards. And they started saying, she's kind of a green reaper. So just went with it.
There you go. Well, again, thank you for your time.
Frank, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.